So we're in an era of visual overload, but also there is so much out there for an end consumer.
I've met so many people over the last 5 years, and whether it's furniture design, it's lighting design, it's automation, everything with home design is now being made in India.
What are your thoughts on AI?
Listen, we love AI. We're embracing AI hard in the office, to be quite honest. We featured a lot of interesting AI artists. For anyone who is wondering what to do, of course, do your research, do all of that, right? But you have the platform to connect with anybody today. I feel like there's so many trade shows, events happening. You have Biennales now, you have Art Fair, you have Art Mumbai. It's huge. We didn't have anything.
Yeah.
For example, if you do a trade show and you're an Indian brand that's doing, say, a Maison or a Salone, you have to be showcasing minimum 3 times to be taken seriously.
Hi, and welcome to the IKKIVI Podcast. I'm your host, Nivi Murthy. Today I'm joined by Esha Gupta, founder of Design Pataki, a platform that has become a powerful voice in how we see design in India. Trained at Parsons School of Design in New York and with over 20 years of industry experience, Esha brings a global perspective and a deep appreciation for Indian cultural heritage. As she says, my passion lies at the intersection of sustainable living, fabulous design, and luxury. In our conversation, we talk about design and what makes it truly thoughtful, the evolution of smaller design houses in India. This conversation was filled with a lot of hope and excitement as India is represented on a global stage more and more these days. So let's dive into the episode. Thank you so much, Esha, for joining us today. I'm excited to get into this conversation, to understand design, understand the relationship that design has with India as well as the global world, the perception of India, and all of those good things. So I'm going to dive right into it because we do have a time limit. So my first question to you is about how you've carved this niche of cultural heritage and contemporary design, and what that intersection means to you both personally as well as professionally.
So, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And of course, I love your podcast. And, the conversations you've been having are so interesting that when you emailed, I was like, I have to be part of this. So I'm really excited to be here. Coming back to your question, I think my journey with design has been over the last 20 years, to be quite honest. And as a child, I would sit with my mom over Diwali to, discuss paint shade cards, fabrics, how do you redecorate, how do you reupholster. So that's actually where my journey with the design started. And Design Pataki started as a platform. So Pataki, it's a female embodiment of the word Pataka. So it was my version of how do I talk about design with the female lens, right? So that's where this entire journey started as a blog. And of course, now it's a media platform on design, art, architecture, and lifestyle. So the entire gamut. And it's been a very interesting journey because it's made me meet a lot of interesting people, cultures, global design. And what always appealed to me initially, and that's what you've asked me about, the confluence between the two, is global design. Is how do we bring global design to India and bring the best of both worlds together? I think that's been the most important for me.
And I feel like India now is kind of playing such a large role in the design space globally that it's exciting, because I feel like from a fashion point of view as well, there's so many eyes on the fashion industry in India right now, which is exciting. It's something that has been due for such a long time now. And I do feel from a design point of view as well, like the idea or the perception that people have of India. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and how that's kind of evolved over the years?
So, to be quite honest, there are times when I have traveled and people are like, oh, where are the Maharajas and where are the elephants? And I'm honestly quite fed up of that perception of India. But over the last few years, that has changed. Though there are still pockets of it that still ask you strange questions like that, but you learn to take those better. In terms of global design, we're seeing whether it's Milan Design Week, whether it's Copenhagen, which is happening right now, 3 days of design. You're seeing a lot of interesting Indian product designers showcasing their work as well now.
Mm-hmm.
Indian craft, of course, has always been huge, but now what's happened is we're seeing a lot of that craft. In fact, wicker was something which is very native to India and which is now literally in every piece of furniture, including the one I'm sitting on right now.
Yeah.
So you're seeing so many elements which are, really taking center stage in global design right now, which I love, including like brass materials.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much metal being used in furniture design right now. So honestly, it's changing so much. And if you're to ask me what the future of Indian design is, I would say if the first thing is it's made in India, because I've met so many people over the last 5 years, and whether it's furniture design, it's lighting design, it's automation, it's sanitary ware, it's your tiles, everything with home design is now being made in India, but still not at 100% in certain elements because there's certain parts which, you still need to import, you still need to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really hoping that at some point we're going to have brands in every category, every segment, which are going to be proudly made in India
Yeah.
with global design standards.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we've always taken a hit on. We've always been exporters. We've been vendors. But the movement I am seeing is that we're getting our name out there. So brands are getting their name, product designers are getting their names out there. And that makes me immensely proud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I completely agree in terms of, us being a vendor and now the perception kind of changing to having more of an opinion or a more solid opinion from our part of the world. This is something that I kind of have always had in my mind. Like, of course, I studied in New York as well. And also now working with production here in India. Do you see the difference in terms of quality standards or in terms of attention to detail, all of those really critical and crucial aspects of production and design and all of that is expected, but people don't necessarily in India seem to have an understanding of that just yet? Do you see that also changing?
Honestly, I think they have a very clear understanding of luxury design now. So, in fact, they're expecting very high standards. So, in India, they're expecting quality, they're expecting customer service, they're expecting branding, they're expecting everything. And because we're a make in India, make in like all hands in sort of country, we're trying to do it all, which is also really tough. But let me tell you a story. When we started Design Pataki, we actually wanted to have a retail arm as well. And we would go to this trade show called EPCG in Delhi at that point in time, which is an export trade show essentially for makers in India. So all your makers in Muradabad, Jaipur, Jodhpur, all of them have booths over there. And when you go there, it's wild. It's as good as going to like a design show internationally. But here's the catch. They don't cater to the domestic market at all. They don't care about you. You're literally a fly over there who wants 50 pieces of one SKU or 30 pieces of a SKU. They're looking at catering to your pottery barns and your crates and barrels and, CB2. All of that is the market they're catering to. So this was 10 years ago. Cut to now, all of those export houses now have a retail arm. They have showrooms in India. They're white labeling for brands. So they're giving you the quality that is export quality in India now. So that challenge also has changed. So now we're friends with these people now.
Yeah.
So earlier they literally would not look at us.
Yeah.
And then we, decided not to do the retail arm at that point because it's really tough to do it. And now they're branding, they've come up with their own brands. Like Elementary is an example. Elementary is an export house. There's Orange Tree, which is again a big export house. So they've got stores pan India, and the domestic market is big for them now.
Yeah, which is so exciting because I always felt like, we would travel and be like, why is this not available here? Even though it says made in India, like I've not seen it in India. Where is it?
Yeah.
Even with clothing for that matter.
Yeah. So H&M home, Pottery Barn, Zara home. It's wild how much is made over here. And then you're literally buying it, abroad.
So I want to kind of go into Design Pataki a little bit. It doesn't just document design. It influences how people value and see, the design that we have in India. Was this something that you had as an intention right from the beginning with the platform? And how do you kind of see the platform evolving? And what is your plan with it?
So honestly, Nivi, when we started, there was no Instagram, to be quite honest. There was only Facebook. Most of the brands we were talking about didn't even have websites. Those are the dark ages. That's when we kind of started. And at that point, there were two magazines who were largely print. There was no digital magazine, to be quite honest, on design. So the idea was to make design in India more accessible, and through our lens, through a lens of luxury, through a lens of made in India, and the idea is always that it has to be a democratic platform, because that's something we saw as a fault with luxury magazines, is that they would only feature what sit within a certain filter that they had. So for us was also to give voices to people who are doing really interesting work. And that kind of ethos we've kept through and through all through the years till now.
Yeah, it's kind of been something that is also difficult to hold on to, because it's like so many digital platforms have changed, they evolved. You've had to adapt to different, channels. We do have a lot of people in the design space specifically listening into this podcast. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on, having a presence online, what that actually means for, say, an individual design professional, and how would that kind of play out for them? Because there's so much thought and time that is required to have this online presence, and in comparison to the amount of work that you actually have to do, which also requires a lot. Like, how does that kind of work out?
Honestly, I feel like I've had a lot of people ask us that question, like, how do you balance both lives? So honestly, for us, it's our bread and butter, being digitally first, being on social media, right? But I completely understand, as a designer, as an artist, as a creator, and when I say creator, I mean not a content creator, to sort of focus on your work, right? So I always tell people, do good work. As long as your work is great, you will be discovered, because at the end of the day, that is what you're good at. And I'll quote Federer in this. He was doing an ad with Anne Hathaway for Switzerland tourism, and he did 20 takes, and Anne Hathaway did one. And he goes like, you know what? I don't care, because this is not my job.
Yeah.
I have to play tennis, and that's what I'm good at. So it similarly applies for a designer, for an artist, that, hey, just do good work. And, of course, being on social media a little bit here and there, find a balance. Like, it doesn't have to be your all in all. It doesn't have to suck that energy out of you.
Yeah. So what is the intention with the platform going forward?
So honestly, change has been a constant for us. As I said, we started pre-Instagram, pre-brands having websites, and we adapted to Instagram, learned how to do that. Then we learned Reels in COVID. I think that was a journey by itself.
Yeah.
So now, having a video editor as part of your team has become so important, versus earlier where it was, still shots were important, right? So now there's so much more energy going into creating video content, into editing. So again, that's another journey by itself. So we're constantly adapting. The brand ethos, like I said, has always been to be a platform for design, art, and lifestyle, but through a lens that is Design Pataki's lens, basically.
So we're in an era of visual overload, like we're saying, right? Like everybody can.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice. It's nice that everybody has access to reaching this wide audience. But also there is so much out there for an end consumer, like in terms of consuming that kind of information.
Right.
How do you approach storytelling at Design Pataki to keep kind of that distinctive, meaningful and compelling narrative in such a saturated space?
So that's the thing. I think we constantly think of what's missing, or what we can, in the conversation, what void we can fill, right? So in COVID, we launched something called DP Cult, which is a platform to discover brands. and connect with them directly. Because what was happening, you couldn't go for a trade show, you couldn't go for a design show, you couldn't travel internationally. How do you discover brands? How do you discover product designers? So we started that, and now that's going to grow into also space for galleries to showcase what are their current shows. Because again, a challenge that we constantly face is, say, other than if you have an art night Thursday, I don't know how familiar you are with that, but in Bombay you have an art night Thursday, right? So you'll go to the galleries. Otherwise, how do you know what current show is going on in every gallery in, say, Bombay, in Delhi, if you're traveling to Bangalore? So the idea is to really give people current, updated information, and also have accessibility to these artists. So we're also doing a platform for professionals as well under Cult. So you'll find brands, you'll find professionals. It could be a stylist, it could be an interior designer, architect, a landscape designer. So the idea is to give you accessibility and curated information through and through is essentially our goal moving forward, besides the editorial content that we put out every day, every single day as it is.
Yeah. I love the visual language that you guys have. Like, I feel like it is showcasing of that beautiful blend of, that rich cultural heritage that we have in India, but at the same time has that modern take. Do you see that as a representative of currently who the new modern Indian is? And how do you see that kind of evolving in terms of a design sense?
I think we've always tried talking to our audience has been a global Indian audience, somebody who travels a lot, somebody who's exposed a lot, wants to learn more. So our conversations will be around what's happening in New York, what's happening in London, what's happening in Dubai. So yes, it hasn't been something we've done consciously, to be quite honest. It's something that's kind of just happened. It is a slightly more contemporary approach to even our fonts that we use, the design, the colors. I've OCD with the colors, as the team already know. In fact, yesterday we're media partners on a show that's happening in Bombay next week. And the founder is talking to me. He's like, when the graphics were going to your team, I was like, will Isha approve of this graphic? That's our filter at this point of time. He's like, if she's not going to approve it, please don't send it to her. She's going to call me up and be like, what are you doing? So that we've kind of really tried keeping the bar high with, of course, the content that we put out, also the way we talk about it. So that's kind of where we're at, which is even why a lot of our reels are all professionally shot. Mm-hmm. We don't do as much. I mean, I know raw handheld content does well, and sometimes people like that, but somewhere it's just who we are. Mm-hmm. That we try really excelling, even in the handheld content, we try excelling there as well.
Yeah. I know what you mean. So, yeah. What are your thoughts on AI and that kind of coming and playing a role in the design space?
Listen, we love AI. We're embracing AI hard in the office, to be quite honest. At times I'm like, okay, can you try this on Midjourney and see what it looks like? And even AI artists, to be quite honest, we featured a lot of interesting AI artists. Mm-hmm. So we're embracing it. In fact, I was doing a podcast with Esha Gupta a couple of years ago. And I asked him about what he thought about digital and AI, etc., etc. He's like, Isha, I'm still a bit old school in that aspect. Cut to, I was at India Art Fair this year, and he actually had done a projection. His utensils projected. I don't know if you saw his piece, or if you were at India. So he had a digital version of his steel objects, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Clearly, we've again adapted to change over the last few years. So I think change is the only constant, and we keep adapting to it.
I agree. I feel like there's so much that you can do to kind of enhance and enable and also kind of help you, right? Like an assistant in some ways. Do you feel like it's going to have that, the most popular conversation with AI is replacing people, and what that would actually mean? Is that, what do you see? How do you see that?
I mean, honestly, that's a really tough question, because I don't want to be the expert in that. To be quite honest, I don't want to be predicting that. I leave that to many others who've, taken that question on. Yeah. I'm sort of enjoying the AI art, and there's so much that one's doing with it. It's quite cool.
It is. Yeah.
So I leave the future of AI. How we're going to
Thank you for listening to the IKKIVI Podcast. If you're enjoying our episodes, consider supporting us by visiting www.ikkivi.com. That's IKKIVI.com. Since 2015, IKKIVI has been thoughtfully curating modern fashion infused with Indian heritage, bringing you hand-picked pieces that blend tradition with contemporary elegance. Our passionate venture celebrates the vibrancy of contemporary design while preserving India's rich craftsmanship, creating stunning and ethical silhouettes you'll love. Our podcast is another passion project driven by our dedication to sharing meaningful stories. It is self-funded and will always be free to listen to. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for being here. Now let's get back to the episode. So now going back to India and India being this focus, right? How do you think India is currently perceived from, in the global design landscape? And what shifts are you noticing in how Indian design, craft, and aesthetics are being received or engaged with internationally? I know we spoke about this a little bit in terms of the few materials that we're seeing internationally, but from a personal point of view, at least with IKKIVI, we still do see the larger market or the larger audience kind of still having that earlier notion of made in India and not really understanding the value that India has in terms of traditional crafts and techniques and indigenous knowledge and all of that. Do you see that at a deeper level? Do you see that kind of playing a role in how Indian businesses are doing because of that perceived notion or that incorrect perceived notion?
No, so it is a challenge. It's still not completely solved. And I'll tell you why. Because, so for example, if you do a trade show and you're an Indian brand that's doing, say, a Maison or a Salone, you have to be showcasing minimum 3 times. So you have to do it 3 years in a row to be taken seriously. Because otherwise they think you're a one-off brand and you will not get orders. You will not be, and it's not cheap to do a show 3 years in a row, right? So you have to have already had a massive base. You have to have already been an exporter who is, you've got the cash to burn. That's the only way you can do it. Alternatively, now what's happening, which is really interesting, is that there are India collector pavilions. There are alternatives to it now, which were not there 5 years ago. So you can still display 2 or 3 pieces in a group show. You can do things like that, which I think make it so much more easier for smaller brands to showcase themselves globally. And of course, there's social media, which has opened up so much as well.
We have so many young independent brands coming up. How do they of course, they have one-off projects here and there that they get commissioned to do, but how do they kind of play a role in the space in terms of being in the market?
No, it's not easy. 100%. When you have to stock, create, sample, showcase, do marketing, branding, social media, etc., it's huge. So in fact, a friend of mine runs this show called Design Democracy, which happens in Hyderabad. And they actually had a design Shark Tank, a version of that, where they had, small SMEs talk about their business and have people invest in it. I'm not sure what the total outcome was of that, but it was a good idea. And I think the notion of something like that is quite interesting.
That is very interesting because I feel like we have so much talent here that, even in the fashion space, right? Like I'm drawing so many parallels here. We have so much talent here in India that I feel like there needs to be, and that's why IKKIVI comes into the picture, is where we have this platform to support and encourage, designers from different parts of the country who are using traditional techniques and, crafts and using fabrics and crafts that are dying and all of that. Like, I feel like there's so much talent, especially in the interior design space and, all of that, that I feel like there's so much more that can be seen internationally.
No, 100%. I think that visibility is still on the lower side. Having said that, I think it's changing a lot. And like I said, I see like design shows becoming bigger. I see a lot more made in India. Having said that, at the design shows, the volume of the Indians that travel for shows now, even art shows, has increased dramatically. So,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, the stats had come to us for the Milan show, and we were eighth on the global visitors, the number for the global
Mm,
visitors, which I think is honestly not bad. Like, if you're,
not
I
bad.
don't know if you've ever been for a Milan show, but you will literally bump into people as you're walking. Like, there are Indian parties through the week. It's a lot of fun. So you have your entire community there. So it's quite interesting in that sense as
Yeah,
to how much we're traveling for work now. So yeah.
that's exciting. What do you believe is key to preserving India's craft heritage while also giving it space to kind of evolve and remain relevant, you know?
And true to herself. I think that's most number. So I think that's what we've tried. So we launched the Design Pataki Foundation last year as a way to give back, and honestly, as a way to use our network, which we value a lot, to bring to these craftsmen and particularly to empower women. In COVID, we had launched a COVID relief fund where I think raised close to 19 plus lakhs for it at that point of time. And it was for an NGO, which is basically the funds would go to women who were not able to even do a CT scan at that point to see if they had COVID or no. They couldn't afford to do a CT scan. And we learned from that for us to leverage our network was really easy to do. And what we learned is we're passionate. I mean, we've always been passionate about craft, and, women in design has been something which has been very important to me. So we're trying to figure out our journey in that space and how do we bring these two worlds together and not have craft as a souvenir that you take back
Mhm.
from India. So that's very important for me. And I think there are a few companies and brands that are doing an excellent job of that. And one of them is Echo. I don't know if you're familiar with this gallery. Um, so of course, as they're doing collector pieces, I would rather have it more accessible and have them really. I like, for example, weaving rugs is a very
Mhm.
empowering job because they can sit at home, take care of their children, and earn money and weave at the same time.
Mhm.
So by looking for models like that, which basically tick all our boxes for to make that transition from going to a 9 to 5 job and coming back and leaving your child behind and having to have them take care. Things like that is what we're trying to see, is where they can do things from home itself and take on the burden of the entire family at the same time. Because, we're women and we got to do it all.
Yeah.
We don't get
Put
cut
that in
slack
there.
anyway.
How does the aesthetic kind of translate to these crafts and techniques? Like, how does that become more global?
That's actually what we really want to figure out. And like I said, there are two or three brands which are I know they're bringing international designers, or they're working with domestic designers to bring a finer sensibility in design. And I
Hmm.
think that's really important because that's where you start moving away from that souvenir piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when that transition happens, where it can be a collector piece, when you can be like, hey, so and so has made this.
Yeah.
Um, and there's just so much. Like, honestly, when I sit to do research on craft, it's never ending.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been through this journey
Yeah.
as well. It's literally never ending. And I remember I was talking to Ayush Kasliwal, who's, a really huge, he loves talking about craft and very passionate about. I was like, Ayush, where do I start? He's like, Isha, you just have to go. This is the answer. You have to just go. The
I love
internet
that.
is going to do nothing for you. You have to just go out there. And that's probably what I would tell anyone who wants to really have a journey in craft and sustainability in Indian design per se, is to really just go and roll up your sleeves and,
Yeah.
start seeing what's out there.
Yeah, that actually leads me to my next question about, careers in the space. Like, we have so many young students also listening into this podcast, like young design graduates. Where does someone even begin in this like large country full of like richness?
Honestly, I wish for all its, negatives and positives, I wish I had Instagram when I started out, because to connect to someone who you admire or whose work you think is good, is incredible at a time like this. You can DM anybody
Mm-hmm.
and have access. We would get info email addresses,
Yeah.
which would just bounce on some
Yeah.
Outlook server, right?
Yeah.
So I think that for anyone who is like wondering what to do, of course, do your research, do all of that, right? But you have the platform to connect with anybody today.
Mm-hmm.
Just send them a DM
Yeah.
and you can start from there. And of course, like, I think your question was more like sort of what do you do? How do you get more information? I feel like there's so many trade shows, events happening. Go meet people, talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
You have Biennales now, you have Art Fair, you have Art Mumbai. Like, it's huge. We didn't have anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even ask you what your journey was prior to Design Pataki. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So I studied interior design, so I don't really have a journalism background, to be quite honest. I fell into this much later because my idea was to, work at a design firm, basically become an interior designer. I did my first project and I didn't have the best of experiences. And by then I'd kind of started writing, pieces, and I'd started this blog on Blogger.
Mm-hmm.
That's the age we're talking about.
Yeah.
Pre-WordPress. So this
Yeah.
is even pre-WordPress.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of how it started. And I said, listen, I enjoy curating more. I don't enjoy really being on site and doing the nitty gritties of it. And I also thought I wouldn't be really good at it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that ship sailed and here we are now.
It's so interesting and funny at the same time that we have the exact same kind of feelings as to becoming a curator. Like, I would have loved to do like the actual designing of things and putting things in, but I just can't. You may have the talent to, I don't have the talent to do that.
Yeah.
But I just love beautiful things and I love beautiful design. And I was like, what do I do with this? Like, really, is this a skill to be talking about?
No, I had an aunt who came to me and said, like, when the website was up and I started writing, she's like, what are you going to do with this? How are you ever going to make money? And I looked at it absolutely like, oh my God, I was like, I don't even know what to say at this point. Yeah. So I completely understand the sentiments. It's very hard because I was like, I was trained to be a designer. So yes, I would love to ideally do what I was trained to do, unfortunately. Yeah. So I always say this to a lot of girls who come because what happens is when they're in design school, they either leave because once they get married or they're not able to be, especially architects. We've had a lot of architect writers join us because they're not able to cope with the timings or the hours for an architect position or a job. So then they pivot into writing for design and architecture. All I always tell them is, listen, don't give up design. Whatever you do, in whichever form, it could be social media, you want to be a social media manager, just stay within that realm because that's what you enjoy. You can be in a different position. You don't have to be an architect and stand on site for 10 hours the entire day because it is hard. Like we said, we have to balance everything, right?
Yeah.
So write or style or freelance, there's so many opportunities. Don't leave design. You've studied it. It's really hard going through those 2-3 years of college. Don't give it up.
Yeah, I agree. So looking ahead, this is kind of my last question. If you don't have anything else to share with us, what are your hopes for the Indian design ecosystem and the role that a platform like yours kind of will play in that?
Honestly, and I always tell everyone, the design industry has been incredibly supportive and just wonderful. I don't know about fashion because I haven't been in the fashion industry, but as an industry, we've been very supportive of each other, and I would love for that to be the same and just grow and bring in more people, bring in more talent, and just celebrate design. I think that's the most important thing for me.
I love that. Like, I do feel like we need to enjoy it as well, Actually, I have one more question.
Go for it.
Is about the emotion and the feelings that are created in a space, right? Like, I personally feel very strongly about that. And there are some spaces that you feel a certain way and very deeply. I don't know if I'm a sensitive individual or not, but like I do feel very deeply about certain spaces. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and how we as individuals can become more aware of how what kind of impact that's having on us, emotionally, mentally, all of that?
So, we're talking a lot nowadays about neuroaesthetics. Is that the direction
Kind of,
you're?
yes. Yes.
Yeah, is that the direction you're
Yeah.
going? So, neuroaesthetics is that. So, is exactly what you're talking about. We did this interview with the Indian Pallavi Dean, who is based out of Dubai, and she actually takes a psychologist with her for her first client meeting to
Mm.
understand how they want to feel in this space.
Mm.
And then communicate that to the designer to be like, hey, this is how they want the energy and the vibe, etc., to be of the space, and not in like a boho sort of fashion, but in a
Yeah,
more
yeah,
neuro aesthetic fashion where you incorporate those elements.
yeah.
So what you're talking about is even like colors, how they make you feel, and
Yeah.
not again from a vastu perspective. It again is very important to some people, but the idea is how does it make you feel? How
Yeah.
do some of the textures make you feel? Smells, things like that. So that all quite kind of adds up. Of course, we're also from the privilege where we can afford to
Yeah.
get all of. Let's not forget that we're also be able to get all of that in and create that energy for ourselves.
Yeah. So do you see that playing a large role in how people are thinking nowadays? Yeah.
100%. Everyone,
Yeah.
because you're so exhausted from an
Yeah.
entire day. When you come home, you really, the home is where the heart is, like, kind of
Yeah.
really stands true at
And
that point of
yeah.
time.
I love that. I love the direction that we're headed in with all of this because I feel it's
Yeah.
such a wholesome thing that it needs to have that attention also. Especially, I mean, of course, like you said, like we have the privilege of even talking about something like this, right?
Yeah.
But it's just beautiful just to
But
have all
even
of these.
travel, hotels,
Mm.
they're so big on not making you feel like you're in that. That's why travel enjoys we enjoy travel as much because now that's changed so much as well. Your experience,
Mm.
you're no longer going to a cookie cutter hotel.
Yeah.
Everything is an experience from what the tea you drink to the spoon to
Mm.
how sustainable they are, all of it. Because, like I said, like you said, you don't want to have a plastic bottle on your
Yeah.
table. Now you want to be sustainable, you want to have a glass bottle. So
Yeah.
all of that
Yeah.
adds up, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
love that. Thank you so much, Isha, for
thank
having
you,
this conversation.
Nivi.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, I always okay. So I'll end on one something I've been telling a lot of people, or just like personally telling myself more than anything else,
Mm.
is always think about how you want to design your life. I think that for me is something I keep going back to, just because it's so deep rooted in us. And when I say design your life, I mean in terms of all aspects of your life and how you would want it to be. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna leave this conversation on that note.
I love that. Thank you so much, Isha. Thank you so much for
Thank
taking the time. It
you.
was such a pleasure having this conversation with you.